Hello. Have you ever been shopping at the supermarket and left more confused than when you left? This happens to me mm, about once a week. And one of these times, it was my mom asking me to pick up a few things for a dinner that she was making. Now, one of the things she asked me to get was salt, but she didn't specify which type. And I learned later that that was probably an important piece of information because I get to the supermarket and I get most of the things that are on the list, but I get to the spices aisle looking for salt amongst other things, and I look and there's like 85 bazillion different types of salt. And I ask an attendant, you know, which type of salt do I need for blah blah blah, and she had no clue. And so that prompted me to go down a little Wikipedia rabbit hole trying to figure these things out. And I am confident in saying that I now am capable of differentiating between different types of salt. And so I thought I'd share this information with you in the hopes that your supermarket experience will be much less confusing and stress inducing than mine. So, the first type of salt that we're going to discuss is sea salt. Now, here's the thing, technically, all salt is sea salt. It's basically the process of going from salt water, and then there's like a drying process, and then the end product are these salt crystals. Now, they're mostly mined from places where seas either exist or did exist at one time in history. A lot of salt, in fact, are mined from these salt flats, which today are in deserts, but thousands of years ago, perhaps, were underwater, underneath these great seas. But over time, they dry out and become these crystals. So all salt is sea salt. Now, for more specific varieties, there is kosher. Now, kosher salt has become very popular in the last 10 years or so among cooking enthusiasts, chefs, and the reason that I've seen as I've researched this is because of its pinchability. They're larger, coarser crystals, and it's a lot easier to pick into a bowl and grab it and sprinkle it into your pasta water than it is to pick up, your typical salt and little grains. So kosher salt, large coarse crystals, and they may vary depending on the brand, but in general, that's how you can differentiate kosher from the next type of salt that we will discuss. Now, kosher salts are often used for brines. They're also used, as I said before, for pasta water. And they're also used to season large cuts of meat because they can actually contribute to, the creating the crust, especially if you expose that meat to high heat after you've, dusted it with your little kosher salt. So that's the main usage for kosher. Now, the next type of salt is table salt. This is the other kind of main type of salt out there. And table salt is what you would think of most people think of when they think of like traditional salt, like in a salt shaker. These are smaller and mostly uniform crystals. And because of this, they're often used for baking. It's much easier to mix the salt into the batter when they're smaller, and it's easier for them to dissolve into the dish. And they're also used, as final seasoning, and from anything from salads to meat to pasta. I mean, salt shakers are on almost every table in America for a reason. Table salt. Now, interestingly enough, iodine has been added to table salt since around the 1920s. But the good thing is that these days you can mostly find all natural table salt without those additives, which is really nice. Now, needless to say, these facts on salt have made my grocery trips a lot easier, much more stress-free, and by knowing these salts' different characteristics, I know which to implement in my cooking depending on the recipe. So I'm hoping that knowing a little bit of the differences between kosher and table salt and understanding what sea salt really is will help you guys improve your cooking and, in the future, make your grocery trips super fun.